everybody. We've got a treat for you today. I have Chris Batarlis from Everything Epic Games here with us in studio. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Oh, we're super excited, and we're going to talk about Rambo, the board game.
Oh, yeah.
So on Kickstarter right now, going really well, funded.
Yep.
So tell us how the campaign's moving so far.
I think it's going great. I mean, people are really, really excited about it. They're talking all about their favorite Rambo memories. We have some amazing, amazing fans that just love Rambo and have just really great aspirations for the game. They're focused not just on the theme itself, but they're also talking a lot about the mechanics, which is really refreshing, and I'm really excited about that too. So it's just wonderful to meet so many like-minded individuals who really love something that you really like too.
For sure. So you nailed the next question for me just perfectly. So there are some interesting, cool mechanics in this game that I would say kind of make it different from some of the other games on the market. So tell us a little bit about how this game plays and what some of those key factors are.
Yeah, we were really trying to do something unique and different with this game, not just another dice chucker miniatures game. I mean, I love board games. I love dice chuckers. I love dice. Big Trouble in Little China, the game, that's going to have a lot of dice. So we wanted to do something that's a little bit different, that's a lot more tactical, a lot more cooperative, where we put that control in the player's hands. We go ahead and we say, you get to make all the decisions and figure out what the best plays will be. So in Rambo, the board game, you take basically gear cards and tactics cards. You build up momentum, and you will use that momentum as kind of a your ammunition. Thematically, it could be explosives. It could be your will to live. So there's survival momentum, ammunition momentum, that kind of thing. And you use that momentum in conjunction with your gear and your tactics to power it up. And instead of rolling dice when you attack, you basically do the damage that's on your weapon. However, you can then, of course, tactically choose when you want it to do more, when you want to kind of give it that kicker to do more special damage or more special abilities by using momentum or tactics cards. So really, you will be exploring the board with this fog of war, and you will be trying to overcome the enemies and take care of different objectives. And you're doing all of that very tactically and strategically by making your own loadout, what kind of gear you want your character to have, which can change every game, and basically taking that deep into the jungles of Vietnam or potentially into the mountains of Afghanistan or maybe small town USA, and taking it basically to the enemy and being Rambo and being those amazing Green Berets, really getting down into the trenches or sneaking around or maybe going all out assault and just shooting and blowing things up. If that's your style.
There you go. That's 80s action hero right there. That's what that is.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about the auto damage. We've had a lot of conversations with folks about this. Some people think it's a really cool thing. Some people are just not sure how that works. How does that play into the way the game plays?
So in Rambo, the board game, you will be basically doing damage automatically. I know that sounds crazy, but the thing that is a little bit random is you're not quite sure where the enemies will spawn because of the fog of war. So basically this auto damage is kind of representing that you are the best of the best, the elite of the elite soldiers. Rambo, when he shoots at something, he doesn't miss. Rambo and his people, they always hit. So you always deal a specific amount of damage according to the weapon and the gear that you're using. Of course, you can change that and you can make it bigger or do different things with your weapons according to how you decide to use your momentum and your tactics, and potentially coordinating with the other players. But this automatic damage basically represents that elite character that you're playing. And when you decide to shoot at something, you hit it. So the enemies also deal damage automatically to the player if they are within range, if they are not hidden by stealth anymore. So stealth is a big factor in that. Again, this automatic damage is a representation of you being in control as the player. we want to put how you want to do the mission in your hands. Rolling dice and missing, and potentially, critically failing a mission just because of a random element of flipping over a random card or just rolling a 1 on your D20, or conversely, completely destroying a mission in almost an imbalanced way by just getting perfect rolls. And in some games, that can happen. I just rolled really well and I won this time. I mean, sometimes that's fun. And there's a lot of games out there, tons, that already do that. So we wanted to kind of take it into a little bit of a different direction. Something more like what you see in Gloomhaven, in certain card games, more like maybe even the Arkham Horror card game. You wouldn't think you would see a random type of mechanic. You'd think you would expect Rambo to be chucking tons of dice.
Right.
You wouldn't think I would compare a Rambo board game with miniatures to something like Gloomhaven or to something like Arkham Horror, the card game. But in fact, you get that here, and you get that big time cooperative discussion going on. What should we do next? How should we attack this next section? How do we best use all of our skills and abilities to their most optimal way so that we can win the mission together? And I think it causes some really great discussions and some really great tactics to go on. And it gives you the ability to really want to play the missions differently, because as soon as you change a gear pack or you pick different tactics cards, you're going to play differently. And again, you're going to really get the control in the game to that player.
I can tell you from the cooperative nature of the game, when we played it, getting ready to do our playthrough, we played it 3 times. It was different every time we played it, and we were playing exactly the same scenario because we were just doing the demo scenario, but the conversation was so cool. And I think from how we experienced the game, the fact that the enemies activate each time randomly in between each player's action really made this game feel different than some of the other games out there, because all of your cooperative conversations and your best laid plans can just go to absolute crap in the flip of a card in between each person taking their turn. So you can try your best. And like you said, that is where the kind of luck component comes to it, because you're not chucking the dice, but you may flip a card that activates all of the enemies on the board at the time. You may flip one that activates only things that aren't on the board at the time, and phew, then you're good, and you can continue on your way, and your plan comes together. But pretty cool, very different for sure.
Yeah, that threat deck that activates the enemies is really that random element that keeps that thrill and the unknown factor really on a high level. It makes the game quickly and easily scale for different numbers of players, because you're basically drawing 1 per player per turn. So that's one of the ways that you get to scale the game really well in that way. But again, rather than putting it on just a simple die roll for Rambo shooting his M60, where you get the disappointment of potentially completely failing your roll, you plan, do we need to take out this particular enemy right now? Because potentially, maybe we've seen certain amount of enemies already activate, and we need to make sure we get past that particular enemy, or that enemy is a little bit stronger. We got to get rid of him because if he hits us, it's going to hurt. And how do we do that? Do we do that with stealth? Do we try to sneak up on him and knife him? Or do we maybe set up a trap and try to lure him in and hope that he's going to actually spawn, or that he's going to trigger with the threat cards? So these types of things we can plan into that. And these threat cards not only just activate enemies, but they also add cool little thematic factors like mud or specific different environmental things. And again, these decks, the threat deck is created for each scenario, and it'll sometimes use some of the similar cards, and you put them together and you kind of recreate the deck for each scenario. So it kind of changes up every time you play a different scenario. Kind of like how when you play set the Fog of War cards, they're a little bit different, and they have a little bit of an effect on them as well. So again, the unpredictability, that thrill aspect is kind of in the threat. It's in the Fog of War. And the planning and the strategy and the tactics are all for the players to really be able to control. Yeah.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool. So tell us a little bit about the different characters that you can play in the game. Clearly, there's Rambo. So let's start with him. And so they each have a little bit of a different play style to them, right?
Yes. Yes, they do. There are going to be quite a few characters in the actual game that we're creating for the core game and the expansions. Of course, we have some stretch goals that are unlocking. There's some Kickstarter exclusive ones. So, everybody loves Rambo. And that's why, you might be interested in getting the game. So, of course, we have multiple different types of Rambos. And each Rambo, believe it or not, will have different specialties. So, Rambo 1 may be really good at potentially setting up traps and surviving, and may have some upgrades with using just his knife. Mm-hmm. Whereas Rambo 2 may be maybe a little bit more in the middle, where you can do some traps, but also use the M60 very effectively in the course of battle. And then you'll see other characters like Colonel Troutman, who, we know Rambo is big at assault. He's great at stealth too, but he's kind of like all around. Whereas Colonel Troutman is really good at potentially inspiring the players and helping with planning and helping with little strategic moves that you can make where you can move momentum around and kind of play with the resources of the game, which are the momentum. And then you have Ko, who is really kind of cool at doing stealthy maneuvers and being quieter. But again, she's a little bit quicker, so she can kind of move around and kind of get up into the enemy with like SMGs and that kind of thing quickly. But again, by changing the loadout and changing the gear, even though each hero has some specialties on their card for their special abilities, you can fully customize that type of character by changing the gear and changing the tactics every game. Awut is a sniper, for instance, and
now say his last name, not just the first name, because help a girl out. That was what I struggled with.
Awut Siwaranyu.
There you go. That
is weapon. It means weapon. He's actually a sniper, and the way each hero works is that they have stances on them, and every round you choose a stance together as a group. Each player chooses a stance, but you discuss it before you even begin the round. This, again, is part of the tactical aspect of the game and helps the cooperative discussions. Each hero has different abilities that they get when they do a stance. They'll get different momentum. They'll have different amounts of movement. They may get different amounts of actions depending on the stance they do. So Rambo, with his running stance, may move faster than other players, but may make a little bit more noise and things like that. Whereas Awut, since he's a sniper, he gets more actions potentially when he's prone because he wants to use his sniper rifle when he's laying down prone. He's better at that. So they kind of complement different play styles, but you may like a specific character and then you may want to try them with completely different gear and tactics, which again, completely refreshes how they feel when you play them.
Very cool. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and you could really tell the difference between the characters and the way they played. I am not the biggest risk taker, so being the sniper was good for me because I felt both useful and didn't feel compelled to try to like race up into harm's way, in it. Gianna, of course, had to go full Rambo, and so what are you gonna do, right? You gotta get that 80s action hero and just go for it sometimes. So. That's right. So we said, for the Kickstarter, so tell us a little bit about what the core game is going to have in it. And then I know there's expansions in the works already. So what are those going to look like?
So on the Kickstarter right now, we're offering basically 3 expansions. The core game and a couple expansions. So the core game is based mostly on the universe of Rambo 2. So even though we're saying it's Rambo 2, that doesn't mean it's an exact on-rails story of exactly 100% of what was in the film. It's within the scope and the universe of the film. So there may be some missions that are very similar to Rambo 2 and what happened in the film, but then we will go do things that are maybe off-scene or additional missions that were in that world. So the core game is basically Vietnam, Rambo 2, kind of what you know from Rambo, kind of going on those really great kind of Green Beret special ops missions with Troutman and all those characters. And then, of course, we had to do First Blood. First Blood, as an expansion is very special because what it does is it basically allows the players to play fully solo as Rambo against the sheriff's department in from the movie. So basically to play out what it was like as Rambo in the film, the whole scene of being in the woods and setting the traps for the police officers. But the other cool twist is we add in a PvP version where one player gets to play Rambo and the other players get to play the sheriff's department.
That's pretty cool.
And so you kind of get that cool potentially 1 versus 4 where it's Rambo versus the cops, and you get to kind of play that out and live it out and have different outcomes of what could have happened. And you could also play the police officers versus Rambo, and Rambo is AI. So you'll be able to kind of really just live that film and have fun with that. And then for the Blood in the Desert expansion, we are basically doing Rambo 3 and kind of taking, I know Rambo 3 may not be everybody's #1 favorite film. However, there are a lot of cool missions that we have put into that box, into that film, basically that universe of being able to go into the mountains, into cool caves, fight different Soviet bases. So, you'll be able to go on all these different adventures, meet different characters, different versions of Rambo. You got the Rambo 3 character, you got different Troutman, and that kind of thing in there. And it's almost like a full additional core game worth of content. So you get a lot more missions. So each box has things called operation packs. Each operation pack is basically like a mini campaign that could be anywhere between one really big mission up to maybe 5 missions that are connected by story. And basically the core game will have about 5 operations, whereas, First Blood will have like 3 or 4 operations, and then the Blood in the Desert big box will also have like another 5 operations. And the Kickstarter is adding stretch goals and bonuses and stuff to that too. So there's a lot of missions in the game, and basically, again, you can play them over and over. And of course, in the Kickstarter, we have a bunch of cool stretch goals too. We just unlocked another M60 version of Rambo where he's kind of, assault shooting the big guns. So we're also hoping to get further enough so we can do the chopper and the tank. So we want to get those
that would be
really
pretty
cool
awesome.
Helicopters and tanks in too.
That would be pretty awesome. Well, by the time this airs, there's still going to be time left in the Kickstarter. So if you are a fan of Rambo, your 80s action heroes, you definitely want to hop on over to Kickstarter and have a look at this game. It has been a blast talking to you, Chris. We really enjoyed playing the game, especially after talking to you. You've already ticked a couple of things that I don't think we particularly considered, like from addressing the enemies on the board more strategically in terms of who do you need to pick out first. It felt really hard not to want to just have to go for who's closest and just start taking care of people. And when you said that, it was like, holy crap, that's probably right where we went really wrong while we were playing. So lots of cool tactical
that
stuff.
Strategic element. You'll learn and you'll kind of be able to get better, and you'll figure out ways of strategizing the missions better. And then you could play them on potentially higher difficulties, and it'll get even more tactical. These enemies, they have multiple difficulties on them, and they have their own AI. So each enemy will move and react differently depending on the mission. So even though it may use a similar miniature or standee, you will basically get a full different AI for each enemy in each operation pack or in each mission. You'll get different enemies. So it really will change the gameplay a lot. So, again, the more you play it, it'll still stay unpredictable because of those couple little random elements, but you will just get better and better at finding ways to exploit the enemy. And that's how it should feel, because you're the elite of the elite. You're the Green Beret. You're Rambo and his friends, his squad. So you guys should have the major advantage. So the more you play, the more Rambo you become.
Oh, that was the best sentence right there, I think, Chris. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to us. Best of luck with the rest of the Kickstarter. I think probably the next time we see you, it will be at Gen Con. So I can't wait to get a great update on it.
Awesome.
and see where we've gone with the game and what's coming next from you guys. So we will talk to you guys again soon. What do you think, guys? It's time to hop into Rambo. If you haven't already, hop over to Kickstarter and take a look.